Today we're answering a question here on complete estate planning from someone recently, and we wanted to bring it here to the show to kind of expand a little further because maybe you've had the same question, or maybe you'll have a similar conversation with your estate planning attorney coming up. But here's the question, Nick. How do I know if I need a trust? I just wanted a simple will. How do I know if the attorney's just trying to upsell me? So let's get into this a little bit, Nick, and kind of explain this process and kind of how you help someone determine whether they need just a simple will like they came in wanting, or if they need more.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, let's first acknowledge, with all the lawyer stereotypes, that it is not, it should not be shocking that people get in this situation, or that they might feel this way, because, people come in saying, I need one thing, and then the lawyer says, no, you need something else. That is more money, more time, more paperwork, and more money in their pocket. Okay, so your guard should be up at that point, especially when you say, I need this, and they say, no, you need something else. But that should not necessarily mean you should expect, foul play or bad intentions. And look, hopefully a good attorney is explaining this to you, but it all depends on if your inheritance needs are things that the will is capable of doing, and capable of doing in a good manner. And I know we've talked about, the differences between will and trust a lot on this show. But there's a lot of situations where the inheritance plan is simple, but people are really worried about avoiding probate. And they say, hey, I don't need the trust for a lot of, customization reasons, but it'd be way nicer and way easier for the kids if they could do this outside of having to slog it through probate court. So that may be a good reason to go with the trust. Or maybe the inheritance plan is a little complex and a will is not capable of doing it. Or it's not good to do that type of inheritance through the probate process. So that's another thing to watch out for. And another thing, it may depend on certain types of assets. Ben, certain types of assets are much easier to dispose of or pass on to the next generation, versus some others that are much tougher. So again, I don't know. I hope that is not the case, but the lawyer should be able to explain this to you as well. I tell people, and also they shouldn't be diagnosing and prescribing what you need until after they have the full picture and they understand your situation. You'll get to a point where the lawyer understands what you have, who you're trying to give it to, what we need to watch out for as far as giving it to them, if they can be trusted with it, etc., and who's going to be in charge of dealing with it. At that point, a good lawyer is going to say, since I know the whole picture, here is the most efficient or the best way, or potentially the only way to go about it. So for our listener, I don't know in your specific situation if a trust is necessary, but I will say, and Ben, I have this conversation a lot with clients, where I tell them we could do a will, but I think a trust would accomplish this better. Here's what it would do better, and here's why. And and I don't feel like that's, being, manipulative or anything. I tell them, I'll still do the will if you want to, but you need to acknowledge that you heard me when I said it's going to be a train wreck, or you can't do this. But also I think it's good to give people options so they understand. And a lot of times they're appreciative. Wow, I had no idea I could do this and I could make it easier. Thank you. So again, to our listener, I love the question. It's one I get a lot, so I appreciate that, and I'm sure a lot of other listeners do as well. It all comes down to why they make that recommendation, and they should be able to explain it, and they should be able to explain it clearly of, if you did the will, here are the things that we can't do or we can't do well, that the trust, has these new features that are unlocked. Okay. And if the lawyer can't really explain that, that could be a red flag. But if a lawyer can explain that, to you and it makes sense, I have a hunch it's either an inheritance that needs to be handled with care, or something where there is a major concern about going through probate after someone passes away. So if that would be the case, that sounds right, and that's probably a good recommendation.
And again, this goes back to, your whole job is to take a look at that complete estate plan, right? And to have these conversations. And we've got into this we'll get into it in a future video, just kind of going through those kind of line by line items. But again, this is the whole point of the conversation, right? You might feel like you need one thing, but your job is to look out for their best interest and figure out exactly what they need, and at least make sure they're aware of those options.
Exactly right. And it is, as a fiduciary, we are legally required to do so. So, that's what I do for my clients. I don't start with any preconceived notion or bias or hunch. I say, let me get the full picture. Let me understand everything. And then when I know the people and the assets we're dealing with and the problems we need to avoid, then we can put it all together like a puzzle and walk through what your options are. So yeah, that's what a good expert is supposed to do. That's what you're paying them for. That is the value, that is the benefit that they bring to you and to your family. That's how I feel about taxes. My accountant knows all the weird, goofy 7-year depreciation schedule for my printers, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that stuff. I don't want to know that stuff. I'm glad he does. That's why I keep him around. That's why I pay him every year. So that should be a green flag. And, he tells it to me like it is. You can do this. You can't do this. That's a bad idea. That's a good idea. So even if he's delivering bad news, he's telling me what I need to hear.
And I think people get that sense, Nick, just from all of our past episodes. They've watched any before, they probably get that sense. But it's important to talk about that and make sure for everyone that's just kind of watching this for the first time and getting to know you in the process, that they understand that. But it's a great question. And again, one that you might face if you're going in thinking you might just need a will. There's some other conversations you might have with a good estate planning attorney. You should be having, probably, is a better way to put that, but something to be aware of. But a good question. If you have one for us, you can just leave a comment down below or reach out to Nick directly, CompleteEstatePlanning.com. Schedule a time to meet with him there on the site. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll talk to you again soon.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by estate planning? The process can seem complex, but it doesn't have to be. The Rosenbauer Law Office is dedicated to helping you protect what matters most: your family, your assets, and your peace of mind. Nick and the team will guide you through every step of the process, making sure you feel confident and informed along the way. Take the first step toward peace of mind today. Schedule an introductory call by clicking the link in the description of today's show.
This show is for informational purposes only and does not provide any legal advice. Information on this show may not constitute the most up-to-date legal information. Please do not act or refrain from acting based solely on anything you hear on this show. This show does not form any attorney-client relationship with the Rosenbauer Law Office, LLC. Please seek the counsel of a qualified attorney before addressing your own estate planning needs.